The first thing to understand is that the apology has almost nothing to do with the actual inconvenience caused. 3 or 4 minutes, in practical terms, changes almost nothing about passengers' day. It rarely makes anyone seriously late. By any rational cost-benefit calculation, it doesn't seem to warrant a formal corporate apology, an internal incident report, and a paper trail. But Japanese railways don't measure the apology against the inconvenience. They measure it against the promise. When a Japanese railway publishes a timetable, it isn't treated as an estimate or a general guide. It's a binding public commitment, exact to the minute, repeated hundreds of times a day for an entire year. Passengers don't just hope the train will arrive on time. They build their lives around the assumption that it will, with a confidence usually reserved for physical laws rather than corporate schedules. A short delay in this framework isn't a minor inconvenience, it's a broken promise. And in Japanese institutional culture, the size of an apology is calibrated to the seriousness of the commitment that wasn't kept, not to how much it actually disrupted your day.
To understand why a broken promise carries this much weight, you have to return to a concept that runs through nearly every layer of Japanese public life: meiwaku, the act of causing inconvenience or burden to others. A delayed train is, structurally, an enormous meiwaku event, not because of the few minutes themselves, but because of the scale. A single delay ripples across tens of thousands of passengers simultaneously. Missed connections, disrupted meetings, a chain of consequences set off by one disruption multiplied across an entire network of people who trusted the schedule completely. Railway companies operate with an almost anticipatory awareness of this. The apology isn't really directed at the individual standing on the platform. It's an acknowledgement of the collective burden the company has placed on the system, a recognition that something was promised to thousands of people at once, and that promise wasn't fully kept. This is also why the apology happens regardless of whether passengers seem visibly bothered. Most Japanese commuters show little outward irritation even when delayed, itself a product of the same cultural restraint that produces the apology in the first place. The apology isn't a reaction to frustration. It's an internal standard, applied automatically.
The delay certificate, issued for delays of roughly 15 minutes or more, reveals something specific about how Japanese institutions think about responsibility. In many countries, the burden of proof for lateness falls on the individual. If transit delays make you late for work, it's generally up to you to explain or simply absorb the consequences. Your employer may or may not believe you. In Japan, the railway company takes on that burden itself. The certificate exists because Japanese workplace culture treats punctuality as a serious obligation, and arriving late, even for reasons outside your control, can carry real professional weight. Having caused the delay, the company accepts responsibility not just for the inconvenience, but for the consequences that inconvenience might create in someone's professional life. It's a proactive form of institutional accountability. The company doesn't wait to be asked. It builds the infrastructure of that responsibility, printed, stamped, ready to hand out, before any passenger even requests it. Beneath the visible apology sits something less visible, but arguably more important: documentation. Every delay over a certain threshold triggers an internal review. What caused it? How long it lasted? Whether it could have been prevented. The findings feed into Kaizen, the relentless, incremental refinement of systems based on what went wrong, however small. The apology, in this sense, isn't only a courtesy extended to passengers. It's the visible tip of an internal accountability process. Saying "we apologize" obligates the company, internally, to also ask what it's doing about it. Multiply this across decades of operation and millions of trips,
and you get a system that has essentially refined itself through an accumulated history of taking every small delay seriously. This culture of accountability has a more serious edge to it as well. The same pressure that produces extraordinary punctuality has, at its extreme, contributed to tragedy. Most notably, the 2005 Amagasaki derailment, where a young driver, afraid of the consequences of a minor delay, took a curve at unsafe speed, trying to make up lost time. 107 people died. The investigation became a turning point in how Japan discussed the relationship between punctuality culture and safety. A reminder that the same values producing excellence can, unmanaged, produce real danger. Japanese railways responded with changes to training and disciplinary culture, explicitly communicating that safety must never be sacrificed for schedule. The pressure didn't disappear, but the system learned, in the most serious way possible, where its own edges were.
Pull back far enough, and the apologizing train becomes a small but precise illustration of something much larger: how trust functions in Japanese institutions. At the center of it is sekenin, responsibility. In Japan, responsibility isn't primarily assigned by hierarchy or contract, it's felt. A company that runs late has failed its passengers, and that failure belongs to the company. Not to circumstances, not to the unpredictability of complex systems, but to the company itself. The apology comes first. Explanation, if it comes at all, comes second. This differs from the more defensive accountability, common in many Western institutional responses to failure, where the first instinct is often to identify mitigating circumstances. Japanese institutional culture tends to run the opposite direction. The full weight of responsibility is accepted first. This produces a particular kind of social contract, maintained continuously through small gestures repeated millions of times. The apology for a brief delay isn't really about the delay. It's one of the mechanisms by which an entire society sustains a level of institutional trust that most countries have never come close to achieving.
So, why do Japanese trains apologize when they're late? Because the apology was never really about the minutes. It's about the promise behind them and what it means in Japan to make a commitment to thousands of people and not fully keep it. It's meiwaku made audible. It's bureaucracy turned into trust. It's kaizen made visible. An apology that obligates an internal process of improvement most passengers never see. And at its most serious, it's a culture that has had to learn through tragedy where the line between accountability and danger actually sits. A short delay, a formal apology, a printed certificate if you need it. It looks from the outside like overkill. From the inside, it's simply what it means to keep your word and to say so clearly on the rare occasion that you don't.